Hey everyone, thanks for joining in. This is, we'll say, exhibit talks tonight. We're really happy to be back. We're about to open with a new exhibit on the main floor gallery. It's called Fires, Hoboken, 1978 to 1982. And it opens this Sunday. All are welcome. And we do have quite a few talks associated with the exhibit, but we'd love to see you here on Sunday, and you'll meet a lot of interesting people. And I'm sitting here with Christopher López, and he's right here. Okay, say hi, Chris. So Chris has been working his butt off creating this exhibit. He's had help from the Museum of Installation, but he is our guest curator. And we did interview once before, Chris, and I looked up when that was. How long ago do you think it was?
Over a year.
It was March 2021.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're coming up 2 years, not 1 year. So that's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
And behind us is kind of a sneak preview of the exhibit. But, I think one of my favorite parts are the exhibit is that you actually went out and talked to, shall we say, the people who are the survivors of this fire.
Yeah.
And rather than go through each section of the exhibit, I was thinking you might go through the different people that you interviewed that are in the exhibit and talk a little bit about their story.
Okay. Yeah. So for at least the main gallery exhibit here on the first floor, what we've done is we've offered different portraits of all of the families that I had the honor and the privilege to interview over the course of the last 2 years since I began the project. And so the work really is sort of a relationship building that I have with these families, in which I introduce myself, and we make first contact, and it's kind of like the relationship. And so the oral history part of this project is not so much just like one interview, it's actually several interviews that I have either by phone or in person, and they're always recorded. And so I have the ability to go through all of the transcripts and kind of pull things that are very important that they have to share about their time and experience then and now. Right. So it's really kind of looking back at history, but also kind of looking at where these survivors are now and how they've kind of processed and dealt with the trauma of their time. So, mining those transcripts and building those relationships are certainly a really big part of this exhibition that I'm really happy that we put together, and incorporating sort of pull quotes that we've put on the wall, I think was a great idea. And I think it really does make a powerful statement. And so I kind of meet that testimony that they offer. And so essentially, a big part of my work as an artist and as a visual artist, photographer, is to kind of just listen to the things that they have to say and kind of consider how I can create an image about the things that they tell me. So the images that I create are very much informed by the stories they share. And I think that is communicated in the exhibit and in the work that I produce.
And actually, there will be QR codes where people can listen with their phone. They put the phone up to the QR code, and it'll drive them to that. So you'll actually hear their voices from the sit down with yourself. And that may be hard to do at the exhibit on the opening because there's a lot of noise. But we do encourage people to bring their own, obviously their phone and earbuds. We will have headphones that people could use, but it's always best and safest to use your own. And
so you don't transmit any kind of like
whatever it is. Exactly. Ear stuff. Yes. And can you take us through some of the people? And then the other part of that is like, your photographs were, you know, they're really strong. Your portraits, in a sense.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're photographing a person, sometimes you're photographing an object that is kind of, represents the feelings of that person.
Yeah.
And were they mainly, like in most cases, did you, if you met them a few times, was that photograph done like the first time, or
Right.
were you gaining trust?
Yeah.
Eventually do it? Or?
Yeah. I think sometimes I play it by ear. Again, it like very much depends on what they tell me. A lot of times, we're having conversations over the phone, maybe several times before we meet in person, and so it really is just a compilation of so many conversations. But for example, one of the images in the show is one of my favorite images is of a ballerina statue being held by this family. And so, right, when I had spoken to the daughter of that family, she had upon our first speaking over the phone, and it's always a cold call, so it's almost always sort of a shock for the person.
Like, who are you?
Who are you? And what is this? And like,
Sure.
oh my God, how do
Right.
you know that I was in the fire? It's because I've done all of this research, so I know your name. I've had your name written down on a piece of paper for months, and here I am finally being able to speak to you now for the first time. So it's shocking, the first encounter in that conversation, but usually on that first conversation, people often divulge the most, and I think that's a testament to the work that I'm doing, in a sense that it's very much something that they would like to speak about, and they're very eager to speak about it, and oftentimes for the very first time. And so, for example, the Tapia family, which is this beautiful photograph of a ballerina being held by the whole family, it was in that first conversation, the daughter of the family had said, well, we have this ballerina statue, one of the only things that survived this fire. And she says, I think that's your photo. And I was like, right.
What did you say? No?
Yeah, no, right, exactly. So I was like, that makes life very easy and super exciting. And so then, again, I had the privilege of meeting the whole family, the mom and the dad and the 3 siblings. And we all sat down and we had this conversation that was recorded. And, it's kind of, you work your way up to photographing the statue. Oftentimes I like to offer photographs to the family just for themselves.
Sure.
So, so I'm like, it's not so much to like cater to me and my cause. It's like, take a family photo for yourself.
Sure.
And then you kind of like work your way into getting the statue out and working together and figuring out how it's going to work. And then,
Right.
You're
not going to say, can I borrow the statue and I'll bring it to the studio?
Right.
So that would
So, yeah. And so sometimes wonderful things like that happen, but there's tons of circumstances like that.
Are any of these families going to be coming on Sunday?
Sure. So the ballerina statue, the Tapia family will be here. I have a really strong relationship with them. We've had many conversations so far. I consider them my friends. I hope that they consider me a friend as well. And so actually, their family, the mom and dad, speak Spanish, not English, right? Okay. So I was like, okay, I need to offer these oral histories, right? So that people can listen in.
Sure.
I said, okay, well, who will play the parts of the parents?
Right.
And I'm like probably for like a month thinking, oh my God, like who am I gonna get to be fill-ins to kind of narrate? And after all of this, I said, duh, like literally like 2 weeks ago, I was like, it should be the children.
Sure.
And so I arranged it with them,
Right.
and I went to the daughter's house and she played her mom, and I went to the brother's house and he
Right.
played his dad.
Sure.
And it was actually a really kind of like, it's a strange experience to have to play their parents and kind of like fact check the things that they were saying.
Sure.
And have these longer conversations. It was kind of like revelatory in and of itself, but it was also a fun experience. But they will be here, and I'm really excited to have them here.
We haven't really discussed that, but at opening, if any of the families want to speak and just do
Sure.
a greeting,
Sure.
that would be fine.
yeah,
You would
yeah.
do the intros,
Sure,
and if there's
sure,
a translation,
Sure.
the kids could do it.
Yeah, I think so.
And, or you could do it, however
Yeah.
you want to do that. So
Yeah.
it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I'm excited to have them here. Another person that's here in the show that I've done a portrait of, Janet Ayala, she will be coming up from Florida.
It's for Sunday.
It's for Sunday.
Right.
She was very, very adamant about being here.
It's an amazing portrait of her.
It is a really good portrait of her.
You know, when you watch it, you feel her pain.
Sure.
Yeah.
It was a really kind of like a special portrait. Her and I have a I think I have a longer standing like relationship with Janet from any of the other subjects, in the sense that we've spoken the most over the course of these months. And so, again, she's a friend, and when I went down to Florida to take that portrait, she had invited everyone from her family. So when I got into her home, there were like 25 people in the house. And I'm like, you know, they were all there for me.
I didn't bring my wide angle lens. Right.
Yeah. And so I met everyone in her family, and they were all wonderful. Janet's an amazing mom and an amazing grandma, and her story is incredible, and she's a beautiful person. And so, you know, I had recorded her testimony of the day of that fire some months prior, and the day that I took the portrait that you'll see, I had played that recording for her, which was the first time that she'd ever heard herself speak about this.
Sure.
And so I think that resulted in these powerful images, and right, and so that was kind of special and really important.
So I can imagine a lot of this was emotional for the people.
Super emotional for the people.
A lot of them lost family members in these
Many
fires.
of-
Not only they survived, and you get into why did they survive, and you know the family members died.
Certainly. Yeah, you always have to. I think often they play the fire over in their mind and think about how it all happened. And Janet, for example, you know, she'll be the first to tell you, my mom saved my life. She's the person that woke me up, and
Right.
her mother died in the fire.
Which fire was that?
Is the Pinter Hotel fire,
Right.
1982. And so then, so to kind of have to relive this is a really hard thing, but oftentimes you'll find that it's the first time that they've ever really spoken about it. Oftentimes they share that they don't even tell their immediate family.
Right.
Right.
It's like going to war, or you know,
Right.
some
It's
trauma.
like something you
and,
don't- you just-
brings it all back.
You harbor it.
Sure.
And so I think in that sense, I'm sort of like this kind of like neutral party, where it's like, I'm like inquiring, and they're like, oh, okay. It's like somehow it's like, because I'm like neutral, like it's not like, it's hard for me to tell my son this.
Right.
Or my like
Sure.
husband or my significant other this.
Yeah.
They're like, you're just a guy that's
Right.
just asking me about this, and you
Sure.
say you're doing what? Creating a history of this. Well, I want to be a part of that, and I'm just gonna tell you everything that I got to say.
Right.
And so that kind of like works out, because they really do share with me a lot. And I think that's important. All of those details are important about their experience. That's what we're doing.
Right. I haven't heard any of the transcriptions. I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to
Sure.
that. But as you mentioned, we do have some pull quotes above,
Yeah.
and Janet's in particular is pretty powerful.
Yeah, Janet's is very powerful, and kind of like sums up the whole show, right?
Definitely. We won't read it,
Right.
just because we're stationary, and we said we weren't
Right,
going to.
because Sunday.
We weren't going to give Rand a heart attack that we're going off camera. But very true, very true. I mean, I know the transcriptions, audio is a very powerful medium.
Yes.
And combined with your portraits,
Yeah.
I think it's going to be
Yeah.
pretty cool.
It's the first time that I've ever worked with recording an
Sure.
oral history project. And I actually, you know, not for anything, it's like I kind of always knew that I would do it, but actually building our relationship here with the museum from the very onset,
Right.
I think you and I had a relationship, and I had come to you with just this as an idea in the beginning, and I had
Right.
done no interviews.
Right.
But it was looking at the chapbooks and knowing that the chapbooks were a result of oral
Sure.
history work.
Right.
I said, that's a really cool thing, and I'd like to do that. So
and hopefully
And now I'm
we
doing
will get this archived and up there,
Right.
so it will live on. And Janet's quote is sort of like, who will tell this story?
Right.
And I would say you're telling that story.
Sure.
And we're helping you tell that
That's
story.
right. That's right. And I'm helping them tell their story.
Yeah, so
Everybody's
we're
helping
all
each other.
kind of gifting,
That's right.
regifting here, which is a nice thought.
Yeah.
We must mention that these fires, we're really just dealing with a small window of these fires, 78 to 82.
That's right.
People like Dylan Gottlieb
Yes.
in his article
Yes.
is dealing with a much longer period
Sure.
and talks about,
Sure.
I can't remember how many fires, the number is incredible.
Yes.
Rosa Roscoe, who is part of the exhibit.
That's right.
She has also done a spreadsheet with lots of the fires.
That's right.
But in the course of our discussions, you decided to zero in on this 4-year period.
Yes.
And I can't remember why, but I know I was pushing it a little bit.
No, I know that we were. Yeah, it's like I mean I'm only one person and I work alone, and there's a lot of fires and there's a lot of history. Dylan's essay was really sort of monumental for me and foundational for me in the work that I'll do, because it was such a provocative essay in the sense where it propelled me to dig deeper and to put things under a magnifying glass and look for myself. But yes, the 78 to 82, we can say, are the years where these fires became more fires, and also where the aggression was felt.
And more deaths.
Yeah, more deaths, and the aggression was felt where people were actually taking to the streets and protesting and saying, "Wait, now this isn't like a literal problem." They're not spaced out. They were like every week.
Right.
There was a fire. And like,
There's a fire,
This is a problem.
Sure.
Right.
Right. And so we do, behind us is a map of Hoboken, very hard to see, but we have red dots. I think we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Cool.
10 major fires with quite a few losses.
Yeah.
And we do have, in a sense, a visual of the locations where these fires occurred.
Yeah.
And of course, when you drive around Hoboken, and for instance, when you go by the El Dorado at 12th Street, you have those two figures that are, part of the architect.
Yeah.
You actually have a plaque on the building,
That's right.
which talks about it being an ideal example of townhouses from the 1880s.
Middle class privatized housing.
In 1880,
That's right.
but of course they don't mention anything about these fires in 1981.
They do not.
100 years later.
They do not.
And it's kind of, I'm getting a little personal here. I drive by the El Dorado every day on my way to the museum, and I always look over and I think about that fire.
Yeah.
And it happened to be a time period when I had just moved to town and lived around the corner.
Yeah.
And I would say that anyone who was living in Hoboken in the late 70s, early 80s, especially those who were born and raised here, are going to connect with one fire just because of the proximity of it was close to their place.
That's often the case. Yeah.
And they will never forget it.
That's right.
They'll never forget the smell.
That's
They'll
right.
never forget, did they react properly in the situation?
That's right.
There's a fair amount of guilt.
Yep.
And you wonder about, how come no one was ever, in a sense, prosecuted for the arson? And we all know that arson is very hard to prove.
That's right.
And we're not even addressing, what the reasons might be for arson so much. But we know that accelerants were used in many cases.
Yeah, in many cases. Well, I mean, even during the time, it was just kind of known. It was published as news. It was news that this was arson. It was proved arson, even at the time. And so that also was what led to the protests and people.
Sure. Right.
Yeah.
I'm just going to I'm a little stickler sometimes, but in a sense, nothing was ever proved legally that it was arson.
No one was ever no one was ever convicted. But
Right.
it was.
I don't know of a fire where they said this was arson. Do you know?
Certainly there are.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Do you know?
1202 Washington was
Okay.
certainly.
Okay.
Certainly
I
arson.
just didn't know.
Yeah, that's right.
That report was
yeah.
ever
Oh, yeah.
filed.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
Yeah.
There's Irene. Thank you. I live right behind the fire. I hate the smell of fireplaces in the winter. So Irene lived, I believe, on Bloomfield Street, just off that block.
Okay.
So that sort of speaks to, what we're talking about. There's
Yeah.
always a fire that one will remember.
Pinter Hotel, Bloomfield and 14.
Yep, exactly, exactly. So, anything surprising doing this research, hearing from people and going through, scouring the papers and going through the museum archive?
Yeah, I think there's I think one of the things that I think is really one of the things I sought to do with the show, and Bob, because when we met and were having our preliminary talks about what the show would be, is the way that individuals and museums alike keep these archives and how we kind of like hold on to these things. And I almost feel like it's like you hold on and you kind of like wait out the day where they'll see the light of day. And I think that this is a really beautiful time where these things can be shown finally, like the Por la Gente scrapbooks that are on display here in the show that I encourage everyone certainly to check out. I think that they're a beautiful gesture.
Right. Do you want to give a little background as far as you know of Por la Gente?
Sure. Well, this is a story that I hear from you, which
Well,
I love this story.
okay.
Well, you can't, how much can you trust
No,
yourself?
I can tell the story, but I meant as an organization. Who
Yeah.
were they?
Okay,
Or-
Por la Gente.
Yes.
Yeah, Por la Gente.
which translates for the people?
Yeah,
Right.
for the people. Por la Gente was, Por la Gente and Cuna and all of these kind of renters' rights advocacy groups that were mostly comprised of Latinos and Latinas. Cuna was headed by this tremendous dude named Juan Garcia, who's no longer with us, but he's actually the uncle of Antonio Lavarilla. And, these advocacy groups and people like Tom Oliveri who work for the city.
Sure.
These people would fight for renters' rights, which is like really getting at the heart of it. Like when you fight for renters, it's like you're really fighting for the people. And so the Por la Gente scrapbooks are really beautiful in the sense that it was compiled anonymously.
Right. Let me tell the story from
tell the
here.
story?
Yeah. So basically, I think there are 6 scrapbooks. I might be off a little bit, and they start in the early '80s and go to maybe '84. They start off with, as you said, tenant rights issues,
Yes.
and these are scrapbooks from the local papers, mainly the Jersey Journal and the Dispatch.
That's right.
And there may be some others.
Yeah.
New York Times was not very good covering this story. I
They
should
covered.
say.
They covered.
You know, they had the Bronx. But anyway, so these scrapbooks were compiled by a member of Por la Gente, and then we're assuming that, but they were sent from an individual, a P.O. box, actually from the Bronx.
That's right.
On our website, they are all on there,
Yeah.
but they're also in the museum as part of the exhibit, and they're also on the monitors. Rand uploaded them, so people can go through them as kind of a newspaper primary source.
Sure.
And they're pretty intense because it's, you're not looking at the ads, you're just looking story after story after
right.
story.
That's right.
And these scrapbooks, which are in, not fancy, they're in kind of your traditional loose leaf kind of book. Binder book, and we can take pages out and all that. And they were sent to Tom Oliveri when he worked in City Hall as, I'll say, tenants' rights office.
That's right.
And Tom at the time was on medical leave because he had an illness, which he eventually succumbed to. And so he's on leave, and the people in the office saw, hey, here's a package for Tom, we better hold on to it. And they may have reached out to him and said, hey, Tom, we got this package. And he probably said, hold on to it, I can't deal with it right now. So the box never got opened. Then when it came around to holiday time, they wrapped it up like a Christmas present and put it in the office to work with the office Christmas tree.
That's right.
Then a couple of years go by, Tom retires out.
Right.
Okay, he still has his medical issues, unfortunately. And
Got this box.
and so eventually they unwrap the Christmas present because it's, the 4th of July or whatever. And they realize, oh my gosh, we got this box for Tom.
Yeah.
And so I think they brought it up to the museum.
Okay.
And then we showed it to Tom. And I might have that chain of command off a little.
Something
Long
like
story. Anyway, Tom says this should go to the museum.
Right.
And he probably died about 6 months later.
Okay.
So those scrapbooks, and
incredible.
we did track down the P.O. box, from the sender. That person was no longer there, so we did try.
Okay.
And on the website is the name of the person,
yeah.
which I feel bad that we, didn't save the box because it is kind of part of the story. But anyway, I'm talking too much about this.
Yeah,
But
okay.
they are cool.
They are cool, and so the really wonderful thing that we wanted to do with this, for the show is to kind of like honor the people who preserve this history, but also kind of showcase it in a way that it's like a lot of it is because there isn't people don't have this kind of closure, so they're kind of like holding on to this thing and waiting for the right moment. And,
Sure.
And this is potentially one of those moments that could serve as a catalyst for greater resolve.
Sure, and those newspaper articles sort of became the backdrop for almost like the mat, the ground for your portraits, right? The way we've laid it out.
Sure.
So you took a lot of care in selecting certain images. It's not just wallpaper.
No.
You can read the whole story.
Sure, yeah.
And if an article ends, it continues, so on and so on.
Right.
So the newspaper articles, again, from Por la Gente, and from the Jersey Journal and the Dispatch.
That's right.
And Bill Bayer,
That's
the
right.
photographer of the Dispatch, is actually part of the show also.
Yeah, all of these characters, all of this history is a part of the show. I think that's a really, is a super interesting process for me to kind of like step back from my own work in putting on the show, in the sense of kind of just like kind of honoring the history in and of itself. A lot of times as I was working on this project, I'm asking myself a lot of hard questions about what I'm doing, why I'm doing it. And I mean, sometimes it's really simple to answer it, but then other times it gets really complicated. But putting on the show was kind of like looking at everything in retrospect and kind of just, so again, like the wallpaper theme that we've created with these newspaper clippings, this was the very first things, this is the very first contact that I ever had with this history. It was through the Por la Gente scrapbooks and other sources online in which I pulled the names of which of the people that you see on these walls in their portraits, right? It's like the first time that I encountered these names are from these clippings.
Right.
Yeah.
So you had to play detective.
Super detective.
And there's a lot of common last names, right?
There's a lot of common last names. The fires affected classically a lot of migrant communities, a lot of Latinos and Latinas, and all different types of minority groups. And so, yes, there were a lot of common last names, and I would have to run public search records for people with very common last names, and I'd have to make a lot of phone calls to a lot of people that didn't know what the hell I was talking about.
Sure.
Until I got the right person.
Right. Oh no, I can just see it. That's my cousin
Oh
in
my God,
North Bergen.
I think my aunt is the one that I
Yeah,
actually talking
definitely.
about. All right, give me your aunt's number.
Sure. And so this is probably the first time that we've, in a sense, opened the doors to a guest curator in this way, which is you.
Cool.
And maybe we did it a bit in our World War I exhibit, our first one with Christine Ziegler McPherson, but that's been a while.
Cool.
And then in addition, you're also showing in the upper gallery.
That's right.
So you've covered about, I don't know, how many square footage?
I don't know. Somebody
we're about
knows.
78, 90,
Get a floor plan.
100, probably about 135 square feet of running space.
Holy Lord.
So
That's a lot of pictures.
That's a lot of stuff.
Jesus, Rand.
Right. And
My thumbs hurt.
so tell me about the upper gallery, which is kind of like a little different, the presentation.
Certainly different, the presentation. The main gallery is looking absolutely beautiful. Yourself and McKevin and the staff and the team did a wonderful job on executing my vision. And upstairs was a little ragtag where...
Don't say that.
Okay, yeah, it's not a little ragtag. So, it's beautiful upstairs. Essentially what we did is we offered a collage of this history. What I did, the upper gallery reflects essentially myself mining collections and looking for images to pull that can speak to this history and beyond, that can leave an impact with its viewers without words, and just to look. And so that is what's upstairs, and it's really wonderful. And so with the assistance of myself and Rand, we installed the upper gallery. There's a kind of historical collage that goes up on one wall, and then on the other two adjoining walls are original photographs that I created that, in essence, are having a conversation with the collaged wall.
Okay.
So it's a bit more, you're gonna learn a lot on the main gallery. There's so much to learn. There's so much to see. There's so much to hear. You're gonna leave the show a smarter person. And the upper gallery, you'll have a chance to see the things that happened or the things the way that I see them, so on and so forth. More, maybe possibly more artistically.
It's definitely artier, shall we
It's
say. More
certainly artier.
interpretive.
It's more interpretive,
And you have to make associations.
Sure.
And probably better understood by people who lived here a long time,
Yeah,
in a way.
yeah.
And they'll remember
Yeah.
the old Maxwell House
Yeah.
coffee. Now, when we say Maxwell, people say, wasn't that a rock and roll club?
Maxwell.
Yeah, exactly. So it's interesting. So, I'm going to say that we've always wanted to do this type of exhibit,
Oh, cool.
but we never really had the depth to research it the way you did it.
Yeah.
And I am so appreciative that you did tell it from the perspective of the survivors.
Great.
I don't think anyone has ever done that for Hoboken, except the original newspaper reporting.
Right.
But when that was over,
Ephemeral.
we're moving on. We're on, if it bleeds, it leads, and we're on to the next.
That's right.
So we have done exhibits on the 70s time period, and we've published a book on that. Cool. But it really didn't have a focus on, shall we say, this particular area of the fires.
Yeah.
And what do you think? Somewhat like if you walk around Hoboken, very bucolic, very kind of upscale. It's expensive, whatever, and residents are here for 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. They miss this. They miss the fires.
Yeah.
So what do you think? How do we?
Right.
What would you want them to get from this exhibit?
Sure. Yeah, I think it's very important for all people to live in context. People should live in context. I live in context. I think history is super duper important to understand our present condition. And so if you can learn about that and it speaks to you and you can be empathetic to it, and who's to say what you're capable of? And I think that for the people that live in Hoboken now, I think that it's person by person, case by case. But for you to kind of recognize where your place comes from, I think that that's really, really important about the decisions that you might decide to make tomorrow about what's going on in your community, and essentially to have more empathy towards
Empathy is important, sure.
Yeah, empathy towards a more equitous
Sure.
world.
So again, I don't think I even asked, so what year are you born?
I was born in 1984.
Okay.
I'm an 80s baby.
Okay, so, and you didn't grow up in Hoboken.
I did not.
But this subject matter kind of, created your interest and attention.
Yeah.
So where does that come from?
Yeah, I think that, I guess because of my age, and the time in which I was a young adult, I have seen places gentrify firsthand, and it really always impacted me. For a long time, I lived in Brooklyn, which was a gentrifying city. Williamsburg, very similar to Hoboken historically in the 80s. It was this huge transformation of displacement and violence. And so I think, when I was in my early 20s, I was living in Bushwick, Brooklyn, which is a place that is now very, very gentrified. But when I was living there in the early 2000s, it was like happening, right? And so it just left a really big mark on me. And I think that a lot of people in my generation are very, it's like a big old question mark with the word. It's like the boogeyman. It's like you don't know who to point the finger to. And I think people point the finger at the people that are like, well, there's these types of people walking down the street now, and there's a new cafe on the corner. It's more complicated than that, and there's more things to learn than that. And so I think my interest really peaked so that I could kind of demystify what all of that was for myself. And at the time, I just was living here in New Jersey, and I thought to myself, well, where is a place that I know that is the classic example of gentrification in New Jersey? And I immediately thought Hoboken, and I said, Hoboken is the place. And so Google search away. I read Dylan's essay and just went on a rabbit hole, and I learned, and I couldn't turn my back on it.
Right. Sure, Luisa Gomez, those occurrences of fires are what have led Hoboken to what we see today. And thank you, Luisa. I mean, that's sort of like for the person who just moved here, doesn't even know the fires, they're going, what are they talking about?
Sure.
So from this exhibit, they're going to see that.
Sure.
And then, it is hard for a new resident to say, what am I supposed to do? I just, I like living here, and how am I supposed to deal with this?
Yeah, it's not, I don't think, there isn't really anything for you to do, but I think that it's still important for you to know. Again, it goes back to what I said about context, and just understanding where the place that you are comes from, and kind of building and developing an empathy towards that, and the metropolitan place that this was, and having respect for that, because certainly there still are people here from these minority groups, Puerto Rican people, Latinos, Hispanics, Asians, Black communities that still live here, even though they are marginalized and they are on the outskirts of the city. Those people are still here.
Sure.
And it's how do you have the respect for those people?
Sure.
How do we?
Part of the exhibit is you interpreted Dylan Gottlieb's timeline, and that's been compiled, and it does go through the process with model cities in the 70s, and so people can see this transition, shall we say.
Sure.
And applied companies providing subsidized apartments, and are credited a lot with keeping, I'll say, people of lower income here, and still do to a certain degree, or definitely do to a degree. And so I've had several people say, why are you doing this exhibit?
Sure.
Because what can be gained from it? And of course, there's usually, that's sort of revealing usually a little more about themselves.
Sure.
And so I listen, and I just say we're very proud of this exhibit, and I kind of blame it on you.
Cool.
And, no.
Yeah, pass the buck, man.
And no, as I said, we've always wanted to tell this story.
I got my tape recorder. Let's
talk. That's right. But I'm sure there'll be some people who's, no one can deny that these fires occurred.
Right.
Okay, and that they were
bad.
bad.
Why is history important?
Yeah.
Who cares?
That's right. And you're talking about anything bad, whether it be
just talk about good history.
Right. It's, and
critical race theory.
And who tells history?
We don't need that.
Who tells the history?
Right. Who's the
And
tells the history? Yeah.
so, we are 40 years ago, but I'm saying that when people come into the museum for the last 20 years, the most often question they ask is, I want to learn more about the fires.
Wow.
So that's where we're coming from for
Nice.
this exhibit
Nice.
on there.
Nice.
So, yeah, this has been an interesting journey.
Yep.
We closed our last exhibit around right before Christmas. Took about 3 or 4 days, which was record time, for clearing out the old exhibit, which was on Washington Street, which was kind of heavy on nostalgia in a way.
Sure.
Whereas this one is a little more, not confrontational, but it's like, deal with this.
Right.
And you have to listen to these stories.
You have to do it. You
And
have to
if
listen
you're
to
gonna
what these
come
people
in.
are saying.
And we know there'll be challenges. The person who drives up from, Scotch Plains or wherever and says, why are you doing this? Or what's this about? But I think anyone who's lived in an urban area in the last 40 years it may not have been fires, but they see this part of a process of changing the demographics. And they're not directly connected maybe, but they are connected.
Right.
And that's, there's gray areas there too. So we're gonna get a lot of interesting discussions. I'll say that one of the things that we'll have set up is that people can write down their thoughts of the exhibit or personal experiences. And we've been known to just record people's stories,
Cool.
About this. You can't be here all the time. Between the staff, we'll be able to get that type of information
Have at it.
collected.
Yeah.
So it goes on. It
Yep,
goes on.
for sure.
I do want to mention that we have several talks, which I'm going to have to get up for a second because I forgot I got it here. Thanks. I probably could have read this in at the end, but I want to get it out there. So again, this Sunday, we have our reception. A lot of the people who Chris get stories were gathered will be here, which is kind of amazing.
Yeah.
And they will be introduced if they want to be introduced.
Sure.
And this event is Rain or Shine. Then on March 5th, we'll have Pastor Elaine Thomas, who's the rector at All Saints Parish. And she has worked on a project that is similar in a way, honoring that time period and different locations around town, and is involved with a dedicated plaque that will be happening in Tom Oliveri Park on Willow Avenue, just 2 short blocks from the museum. But she'll be doing a full-fledged presentation here on March 5th at 4 o'clock. And then we have Janet Ayala.
You've done it.
Okay, thank you. Wow.
Very proud.
She's one of the survivors of the Pinter Hotel. We talked about her earlier,
Yeah.
and you have her well documented in the show. Then we have photographer Bill Bayer on March 26th, who was the lead photographer for the Hudson Dispatch.
Right.
And I'm going to say documenting those fires, I'll say it probably changed his life.
Oh, certainly.
Okay, which I haven't never really talked to him about it. And then the other credentialed person who you may want to give a plug to. Do you want to
Sure.
thank?
Yeah. On April 16th,
Yes.
we have Yomira C. Figueroa Vasquez, who is a Hoboken-born consultant on the exhibit.
Yeah.
That's true.
I mean, we don't have that many Hoboken PhDs who were
Right,
born here,
right.
unless they're teaching at Stevens.
Right.
So here she is,
Yeah,
a
so
local gal.
Yeah, April 16th, Yomira has been instrumental to the production of this project. She's a tremendous ally and friend, and very brilliant. And she is an author, and her upcoming book, which is to be published in 2024, will have a chapter dedicated to the fires here in Hoboken.
And a new mom.
She's a new mom.
Yeah.
Marcel, let's go.
So, Luisa Gomez, Thank you for tuning in again. It is important to tell because it shaped the future of all the people that lived here and also will always remain a part of their life history. You said it better than us, Louisa. Thank you.
Thank you, Louisa.
Thank you. And I hope you can come on Sunday. We'd love to meet you.
Yes.
Okay, I don't think I know her. I think we're gonna, we can segue out. Cool. Anything else you want to share?
Yeah, what I'll share is certainly what I hope is that on Sunday's opening, this can really be a community event. I know that this history is a hard one and a very tragic one. And in this city, as I've come to learn, a very controversial and contentious one. But it really should be a community event. And what I hope in my heart and the way that I've created the work thus far is a celebration of these people's lives. Devoid of the tragedy, they have survived and they do continue and they do have the ability and the voice to share this history and share this story, and so they shall. And they'll do it here in Hoboken. There couldn't be a more important...
Louisa's here. Yes, I'll be here, and was there.
There could be no more important place
time.
For
and
this show to
bring
be
friends
than Hoboken, New Jersey.
And here's Mike Rosen. Can't wait to see this. Great work. Okay, bring your keyboard. Okay, and there will be food, refreshments. It will be. Here we are. We have this kind of sad time period. But it will be, a social event. So a little contrast there, but we really would like people to be here.
Well, again, it's a celebration. It's also a celebration
that
of
we
the
got it
survival
up.
Of these folks.
It's here.
Sure.
And we did this one day in advance, which I don't know if I told you. I think it's the first time. We weren't putting things up Sunday morning still.
Well, there's still time yet.
There is still, yes. There's still futzing to do.
Futz.
You can never clean enough.
Great word.
We want to give a special thank you to the funders for this exhibit. Do you want to do that?
New Jersey Council for the Humanities.
Yeah.
Gigi Naglak, thank you so much. And all the people over there at the Humanities Council, you were all fantastic. It's one of the only organizations that I've ever worked with that gave allowed one-on-one talks with the applicants before they even applied.
I told you they'd take your call.
That was tremendous. Gigi, you are a dear friend. Thank you. I invited her to the show.
Definitely.
And New Jersey Council for the Humanities is absolutely wonderful. Thank you so very much.
And, if it hadn't been for the council, we could not support financially how deep you dove into this.
Right.
And
then Diaspora Solidarities Lab, which is co-founded by Yomira from here in Hoboken, another wonderful organization that is supporting so many different, not just artistic projects, but all types of projects throughout the world, based out of Michigan. Yomira is amazing, DSL is amazing, they've offered funding, they're keeping the project alive.
Right, and we hope to work with Yomira down the line too.
Sure.
Anyway, just going to shake your hand.
Sweet.
It's been a good experience. And Irene, thank you so much. It's important for those who live through it and those new to the community.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. We hope everyone wants to receive this information. Okay, I want to thank Rand Hoppe, obviously, for working on the exhibit and engineering today. We've actually not done this type of thing before the exhibit opens, but I thought it was important to do kind of a one-on-one and give context. And usually we're not ready, so it would be like a nightmare. But we summon the energy. I know you started early today. We know Sadie, your canine alter ego, is resting
My dog
comfortably.
is here right now. She helped with the install.
Would she come over
Morale
and say,
officer.
Would she come over and say hello?
Juge, come. Let's go. Come here. Come here, big girl.
Okay.
Come here.
We have a lot of canine lovers.
Come here. Come here. Come here.
Yay.
I know, you're crying.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, say
Excellent.
bye, Sadie.
Bye, Sadie, mommy.
Sadie, turn.
Bye, Sadie.
Excellent. That's a
Oh,
good
look,
profile.
she's growling at Bob.
Oh, yeah, I better not do that.
Okay.
We
Oh, look, she's giving Bob a
we,
kiss.
we haven't really bonded. Okay. Anyway, Okay, and she'll be staying home on
She's
Sunday?
staying home on Sunday.
Okay, it might be better.
Got her install day today.
Okay, good.
Okay, good girl.
Okay, thanks, everyone. Thank you for the funders for the exhibit, and see you on Sunday. Thank you, Irene and Louisa.